to the practice. So what we hear about from The Secret, the key things that you need to do is you need to ask. So you need to be clear on what you want, not necessarily on how you're going to get it, but on the end. What is it that you're wanting? And what practices now? There's so much science out there, and I'm not saying that I'm a massive science head, so I'm going to explain it briefly and in the best way that I can. I'm going to give you names. I'm going to give you studies. So I recommend that you look this up yourselves because the information is out there. And what they found is that the group that imagined doing the exercise to strengthen their finger, they had a 35% increase in 12 weeks. And actually it increased even more after the study had finished. So after they'd stopped doing the visualization, it got even stronger. So back to the practice. So what we hear about from The Secret, the key things that you need to do is you need to ask. So you need to be clear on what you want, not necessarily on how you're going to get it, but on the end. What is it that you're wanting? And write it down and say it. And you have to believe that it's already yours and show gratitude for already having it, and bringing in emotions. The more that you can visualize it, the more that you can feel it, the more it anchors it in. And
yeah, that's true. I mean, when you say that, there a lot of people are very skeptical, and they're like, yeah, but it doesn't work. And I was like, yeah, it doesn't work because you're putting a but at the end of that sentence.
Yeah,
you're saying I want this, but and deep down you don't think it's going to happen. You're not going to manifest if you've got doubts. Do you know what I mean? So if you don't think manifestation will work, it's not going to work for you, because it actually listens. The universe listens to your thoughts. So if you're like, I want this to happen, but then it's not going to happen. You have to truly believe in the process.
Yeah. It's the belief that's the important one. And I think that's the one when you're starting off that is the difficult one, which is why we've got a little practice at the end that you can start practicing. To start once it happens once for you, then on a small scale, then you start to really believe it, and then it makes you more powerful. So then you can go get the bigger things, can't you?
And do it with little things. Because I remember this happened a couple of years ago. It was springtime, and I wanted to. I was out and about in nature, and I wanted to pick a few daffodils for to put in a vase when I got home. And just the thought crossed my mind. Oh, I don't want to kill the plants. I didn't want to kill the plant by pulling it. But I walked over to a few daffodils, and there was actually 6 or 7 lying on the ground already picked. It was like the universe heard me saying that I didn't want to kill the plants, but somebody had already picked some and just left them there. I was like, oh my God. So like a simple little thing like that, just to visualize something like, oh, I want this flower, you can manifest that flower. It's so start small.
Start small, yeah, because then it builds up the belief in your ability to do it, and what's important is to not try and manifest the path. I think that's the mistake that people, that this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen, then this is going to happen. It's like, no, I intend this to happen, but I'm not, but letting go of how I get there. Like, this is what I want, but I'm letting go of how it appears, because it can come in unexpected ways, but then you recognize it's like, that is what I asked for. So and positive language, and we'll look at the science behind positive language as well. Daily repetition, visualization boards, so that it's always there in your mind, that you can look at it regularly, and it sparks the memory of what you have been trying to manifest. So it's really sort of soaking your brain in that experience of what you want, isn't it? It's feeling it like you're there. It's believing that it's yours already, because that's another thing. And actually Aaron Doherty talks about this a lot, doesn't he? That like, if you think of it as I want this, then your want is a lack. So you're actually manifesting a lack. So you're actually causing a block, aren't you? Yeah. So is there anything else you want to add to the secret there before we move on to the science behind those practices? So visualization, writing things down, what else?
Gratitude as if you've already got it. Believe it as if it's already yours. Act as if it's already happened, and know that you deserve it.
Yeah, yeah. So what practices now? There's so much science out there, and I'm not saying that I'm a massive science head, so I'm going to explain it briefly and in the best way that I can. I'm going to give you names. I'm going to give you studies. So I recommend that you look this up yourselves, because the information is out there. I think I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and what we understand the universe to be like now, and quantum science, quantum physics or whatever, is it's mind-blowing how different it is to what our understanding was when we were at school and how we're taught at school about how things are. So prepare to have your mind blown at the end when we get to quantum stuff. So let's start with neuroscience. So visualization, mental imagery alone. So they did a study where they were looking at finger strength, and they got a control group that didn't visualize. They got a group that I think it was working on their elbow, and one that was working on increasing the strength of their finger by imagining doing an exercise for something like 12 weeks. And what they found is that the group that imagined doing the exercise to strengthen their finger, they had a 35% increase in 12 weeks. And actually, it increased even more after the study had finished. So after they'd stopped doing the visualization, it got even stronger. So there is studies that show that, and you hear about this a lot actually with athletes, successful boxes and things like that, that they imagine. And actually in karate, they tell us, to imagine doing the kata to lock it in, and to imagine fighting and stuff in preparation. So even in sport, they know that visualization does work. It strengthens the neural pathways, and it can actually increase your strength in areas if you focus on it. So there's that. We also know that MRI scans show similar brain activity if you are doing something, an activity, or if you're visualizing doing it. So you're not actually doing it, you sat still or laid down, but you're imagining doing it. The same parts of the brain light up as if you are actually doing it. So the brain doesn't know any different to whether you're doing it or whether you're visualizing it. And this is important when we think about what we're feeding our brain. So if you're watching horror movies, your brain does not know the difference. Your logic knows that it's a film, but your brain doesn't know that you're not going through that experience. So that's why we say you have to be really mindful of what you are feeding your brain.
Like I used to watch horror films. They were one of my favorite kind of movies. But as I started to spiritually awaken, I was like, no. No. Because when you start to realize how spiritual we really are, we're actually susceptible to taking on dark entities. So watching a horror film you can take on that dark entity. So I can't watch horror films anymore. But I can't watch the news anymore. It's the same thing of watching the news or the newspaper. It's very damaging. So, be so mindful of what you watch or who you allow into your environment. That negative mentality, that moaning, groaning people, society as well.
Yeah. And unfortunately, what makes news? Shocking stuff. And so it's not necessarily, some people would argue it's done on purpose, but not even, not maliciously done. A lot of news
the news is malicious. The news is put there to put fear into the people. Like, if you there's a clip on, literally saying, there's these random news clips, and it was like crisis. All of them had the word crisis. This crisis, the money crisis, this crisis. It's like, oh my God, we're not in that much of a crisis. Sorry. I just don't want to watch the news, but it's deliberately there to put fear in the people. A lot of it is false.
And also, what we need to remember is that we evolved, our brains evolved. We're supposed to be in small communities we are not, our brain is not designed to know of all the atrocities that's happening throughout the world at once. Our communities would have been small, you know, and I know we feel it's moral that we should know what's going on everywhere, like that's going to help them, and some people do stuff to help, but you know, if you're not going to be an activist, if you're not actually going to go out and change the world for those people, watching it happening is not helping anybody, and all it is causing, you know, yourself pain. So you've got to be really mindful.
I've said this before. You know, if you're watching something that completely drains your energy, makes you depressed, how are you supposed to be any good for yourself or anyone else? How are you supposed to change the world if that's what you want to do? So watching the news going, I can't change the world because I'm so depressed. Remove the negativity out of your life, become your best version, and then do your bit to change the world.
Yeah.
But you can't do it from a low vibrational energy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and yeah, go out, be really successful, and then, you know, donate or use your platform to really make a difference. But from the bottom rung, you know, you're not helping anybody really, you know. With the small tools that you have available to you, you're better to focus on you and build yourself strong, and then from a higher level be able to help those people. So we hear a lot as well about neuroplasticity these days. So the brain's ability to adapt and form new neural pathways. This supports manifestation practices by suggesting that repeated thoughts, visualization, and actions can literally rewire your brain to enhance the likelihood of achieving a desired outcome. So we hear a lot about neuroplasticity these days. It's really a big thing, isn't it? And that's why we talk about positive thoughts and being positive. It's not toxic positivity, because what toxic positivity is when you've got a bad feeling or an emotion, you're pretending everything is fine. And we absolutely say you should not do that. You shouldn't do that.
Don't ignore the negative, you know, own it and let it go. But what this is, we've been brought up in a society of pain, lack, and fear. Mm-hmm. We've been conditioned to think everything is going to go wrong. We've been conditioned to think everything is a problem. We've been conditioned to live in fear and negativity. And yes, what we think we attract. So therefore, we've attracted obstacles. We've attracted kind of abuse. We've attracted negative energy. But that was all learned behavior. We were born as a blank slate. We learned this negativity, so we can unlearn it and relearn positive behavior.
Yeah, and I dug out my old psychology textbook from high school, and I was reading on brain activity. And it's interesting that young babies, and as we grow, we spend less time in certain brain waves because we're just soaking everything in, and that's when we're kind of programmed, isn't it, essentially, on how to survive and how to navigate reality, what the rules are, and that's why meditation is great, because you can take yourself back to that same state that you would have been when you were a child, and you can neuroplasticity, you can rewire it so that you can have thought patterns and behaviors and things that work for you to get the goals that you want. So another thing that I talk about a lot is the lens we see the world through. So the proper name for it is the reticular activating system, which is the brain's filter, or we might say RSA or RAS, sorry. In what it does is it prioritizes the information, because we're bombarded with so much information from outside our body and inside our body all the time, so we're overwhelmed. So it distorts, it deletes, and it generalizes the information to fit the narrative that you're telling yourself. So it pays attention to the things that you expect to see. So what you get what you expect. And that's why sometimes when we're looking at people through our lens with our stories, and we see someone else's behavior who's looking at the world through their lens with their stories, we can not see past our own filter to see the intention behind somebody else's behavior and whether it's actually about us. And often people's behaviors isn't about us at all, it's about them. So we talk about that a lot. So focusing on a goal primes the brain to notice more opportunities. So if you are looking at your vision board, if you're thinking about, if you're imagining being, you know, your goals being now as if they've already happened, then it's wiring your brain to notice the opportunities, the doors opening. Like I said, I never used to see doors open. And if they did, I'd be like, oh, that's not for me, and slam it shut. Whereas when you are using visualization and visualization boards, it focuses your brain to look for the opportunities, the steps, the path opens up and you see it. Whereas before, your brain would have filtered it out as not important to you. Yeah?
That's it. That is, it is about awareness. I remember when I first started using the law of attraction, you know, and it sounded so woo. I remember my friends come back to me. It was like they went off and did research or something, which is a good thing. And they were like, yeah, you know, it doesn't work like that. And it's like, you have to take action. I was like, I know you do. Like, you know, you're not just going to sit there and twiddle your thumbs and go, here, give me everything. You're going to just
ceiling open up and it drop on your lap.
Well, actually, I'm going to give you a story in a second where something like that did happen. But, like, you know, effectively, you're changing your belief system. You're changing your awareness. You're opening your eyes to the world, and you're going after what you want. It gives you that confidence to make action steps. But then it just makes, as you said, it opens up doors of opportunity. Whereas before you learned or knew, when you were in that negative energy, all you saw were brick walls. You just didn't see anything. So, but you know, I've mentioned this before. A lot of the times we do have to take action steps for manifestation. But I remember when I decided to do a bit of DJing back a few years ago. You know, I had all the equipment got, except I had no speakers. So I was like, I'm going to have to wait till I have money for speakers. And I was a supervisor in a factory, and one of my workers arrived into my house one evening with a speaker worth nearly 400 quid. I remember after leaving, I was just staring at the speaker going, this shit is real. It was the first time I really ever manifested anything, you know, random like that without actually having to put effort in. I was literally staring at the speaker for an hour going, wow, magic is real. And it really is. So, like, sometimes, yes, it is about opening the opportunity or opening the door. But even, you know, for example, you know, I took the steps to become a DJ and I spoke about it to these people. So, you know, I still kind of did take steps, but in effect, it magically appeared into my lap. So,
that's,
you know,
the aligned action. It's like we talk about when I got my ring light, and I was like, I got it, and then I got it out once. We had a mess with it, and then I put it back in the box and put it on the side for a couple of months, and I didn't use it, you know. But that was the aligned action, because when the opportunity opened, I already had that thing ready.
But that's it. Actually, it's already yours. It's like embodying. And like I joke, it's like fake it till you make it. You know, before I became a life coach, I was like, no, that's not for me. I don't see myself in that energy. But I actually had to visualize it, or even say it in affirmations. I am a successful life coach. You know, I'm picture it, embody it, visualize it, start taking the steps towards it, make it real. You know, act as if it's already happening. You know, become the person you want to become by taking those steps to envision it or to embody it in this moment. So, you know, like that ring light, it's like buying the thing even though you're like, oh, I'm never going to use that. But, you know, that was the intention set and now you use it all the time.
Yeah. So another thing is, which we talk about a lot, is self-fulfilling prophecy and belief, which is important. So someone called Rosenthal and Jacobs in 1968, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, is the Pygmalion effect. So it's the psychological phenomenon that's been known for a very long time, where high expectations lead to improved performance of other people and things. So a low expectation leads to worse performance. So acting as a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, for example, believing that one group of students is going to not do well and another group of students is going to do well, your belief in their ability will boost their performance. Whether, you know, and they've done, there was no difference in their intelligence, but the participants believed there was, and then there was a difference in the results. And they've seen this in rats as well. So they've been given a participant has been given 2 sets of rats. These are dumb ones, these are clever ones, and then asked to train them or do activities with them. And then the results are that these are not as good as these rats, when there was no difference at all. It was just the percentage.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. Like, and they used to do this years ago. They used to put kids into groups of different classes. You know what I mean? And it's like, this is the dunce class. But oftentimes the dunce class was actually the most intelligent people, but they were just, they were, and they learned differently. Do you know what I mean? But the expectation of the teacher was that you weren't a good student, so therefore I'm going to treat you like a bad student, and then they end up getting a bad student. But it's the same thing. And I mentioned this about Bart Simpson, from The Simpsons. He thought that one of his cast-on teachers was speaking about highly of him in her diary. So he started to perform better. You know what I mean? And then the minute he thought he knew it wasn't about him, he went back to his whole performance. And this happened to me with one of my workers as well. I had to spoon feed him because he wanted the information wasn't going in, but my expectation of him was high. So by giving him the extra information that he needed, he ended up thriving into one of my best workers. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Because it's all about what you perceive. And if you perceive something to go wrong, it's going to go wrong.
Yeah, yeah. And that you're going to give up, even if you just look from a behavioral point of view. If you believe that you are able to do something, or somebody else is able to do something, you will persevere through the hardships to achieve that goal. Whereas if you just think, oh, they're just not capable of doing it, the first sign of difficulty, and you'll be like, yeah, they can't do it, So from a behavioral point of view, this stuff makes sense. And it's the same about how you view yourself. So if you believe that it's already yours and you're deserving, then you are going to have the self-efficacy to work through the problems and keep going. And actually, when you look at people like Jim Carrey, and he did use manifestation practices, but he took a lot of rejection before he got there, and had he not had this insane belief that he in himself, which wasn't insane in the end, was it? Obviously, but I think even on an interview he talks about, I've just got this crazy ethic about myself and my ability, or something. I can't remember the words he used, which allowed him to push through those difficult times because he believed that it wasn't his yet, but it was his. Fame was going to be his. It's just not yet.
That's the commitment and persistence comes in. Like, and oftentimes we do give up at the first hurdle. But if you just keep going, I know deep down that this is for me, so therefore I'm just going to keep going no matter what happens. And it will happen eventually. Like that Henry Ford quote, if you say you can or you say you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
It's
yeah. So the self-efficacy theory comes from someone called Bandura. So if you want to research that, his name is Bandura. And it's the belief in your abilities makes you more likely to succeed. So just as we've said, like if you believe, for self-efficacy is the belief in your own problem solving and resilience. It's a belief in your ability to work through things even when they are hard. And so the more if you have high self-efficacy, then you are going to persevere for longer, which is going to get you to your goal. Now I've talked about this a lot, the placebo effect. So the placebo effect is well known to pharmaceutical companies, because they have to take the placebo effect into account to ensure that their medication is actually considered effective. It's got to beat the placebo effect. So on average, the placebo effect, so that's having a sugar pill instead of any kind of medication, but the person believes that they are going to get better because they're being given medication. They don't know it's not medication. On average, will make patients improve by roughly 30 to 40%. And so for clinical trials, they have to run a placebo, and it has to beat that 40%. It has to beat the placebo for it to be considered effective. So we've said this many times, haven't we? Like, if you believe you're going to get that cold and you're going to be ill for a week, you are.
Yes, if you the thing in Ireland is it's catching season. Yeah, you're literally asking for the cold here. You're saying, "Come on, I want a cold." no, you have a strong immune system and you don't catch anything. Say that and you'll be fucking healthy.
Yeah, exactly. And
it really triggers me. Like, people are literally asking to be sick, like, and moaning all the time about pain. And it's like, literally, if you concentrated on a healthy body, your pain will go away quicker. You can manifest your good health, or you can manifest ill health. You know what I mean? It's that simple.
And that's what the placebo effect says, that it can be both positive and negative. So it's important that we are being positive about our body's innate ability to heal itself, you know.
Really
and
that's
not to say that we shouldn't use modern medication, but that we should also be trusting our body and being positive about our outcomes. Even if, you know, you're going for some kind of treatment or chemotherapy or whatever, you know, you're going down the clinical route or whatever, you do need to be being positive and you know, looking for examples of success stories, because that's going to help you believe that that's going to happen for you. And what happens often is, what we do is we look at the worst case scenario. In fact, when doctors tell us that you've got this condition, they often tell you the worst case scenario, when actually the best thing for that person is for them to know the best case, you know, because that's going to make them believe that that can happen for them. So